Hello, and welcome to BunyipIsland's first real guide, and this guide is how to do Nex with a tank. Normally Nex isn't tanked by one person in particular, however one person will tank her over other people. However, if you have someone who is a designated tanker, then it means that lower levels are potentially able to do it. And the reason for that is Nex's damage is spread throughout the party a lot less, however it's focused on one person more. So as you'd expect in any game, the tank has to have very high defense and very high magic, because magic contributes to magic defense. However, for this, well, for RuneScape, the tank absolutely essentially needs an arcane spirit shield. This will make your job so much easier. That's pretty much the main requirement. Torva, obviously, if you have it, then awesome. However, the first few kills, or most of our kills, which BunyipIsland has done as a 4, have been with me in Bandos, which is much more reasonably affordable for everyone. Unless you have, for whatever reason, so many billions, in which case you probably don't need to do Nex. Yeah, the roles of the other people, I've recorded a video and I'll commentate over the video whilst watching it, whilst it plays through in the background as a commentary style thing. However, we'll quickly go over the roles of the other people. Ideally, you want 2 people who are maging. Well, if you're doing it as a 4, 2 people who are maging and 1 person who is ranging. Potentially he could have mage as his primary damage on Nex and switch to range just for the minions and the blood fells in the blood phase, which we like doing. However, what we do is, because our ranger didn't have he does have high magic, but he has Damon has 95 magic currently, I think. But he was more comfortable with melee and has a maul, doesn't have very expensive mage gear, so he decided to melee instead. Completely optional. Highest damage completely isn't necessarily your primary goal for Nex with this setup. Your goal is just to actually get a kill, and not necessarily the most effective kills, because undoubtedly these kills are much less effective than when everyone is in range or maging, because you have 1 extra damager and that makes kills faster. However, with this setup, like I've already said, you will be able to get a kill when otherwise your team probably wouldn't be able to, and that's purely because most of Nex's damage is focused on 1 person instead of spread around other people who may have lower defense. So my equipment, I'll quickly go through it, and yes, that is an amulet of defense, but more on that soon. Well, very soon actually, because all I have to go through is the cape. This cape, blue cape, is from Nomad's Requiem, just standard prayer cape. The reason why I'm not using the fight kiln cape is because it doesn't have very many defensive stats, and as the tank you just want to focus completely on getting as little damage done to you as possible, so more armor is definitely better. Amulet of defense, quite simply because this amulet is actually really good now. It's got a little more than half of the crit that the Fury gives, which granted isn't that good, but it has a bonus 100 armor, which is actually quite a lot, especially when you're wearing complete tanking gear. I'm pretty sure that armor the more of it you have, the better it becomes. So for example, when you have 10 armor, when you've got 0 armor on and you equip 10 armor, it will be not as good than if you have 100 armor and equip an extra 10 armor. So it scales up in that kind of sense. Chaotic Longsword, just for the fact of a fairly strong melee, one-handed melee weapon, could be substituted for Chaotic Rapier or potentially even a whip. The tank's damage output is actually really low, so just take whatever, really. Colin Romance's gloves, fairly good for tanking. I could have taken Goliath gloves, I think. However, I don't have the requirements for them, because they do have pretty high requirements. I could quite easily get them though. That's mainly me just being lazy. Berserker ring, because the Tazar ring that you get from doing the fight kill and the quest, that does give 80 armor and 1.5 critical strike in all different attack styles. However, the Berserker ring is just 20 more armor, 0.7% higher crit chance in all, so that's just a better pick. However, if for whatever reason you can't afford it, then simply go for the Tazar ring or the Tsar. Torva Full Helm can be substituted for Barrows. Actually, full Torva can be substituted for Barrows. This is because with Evolution of Combat, Barrows and Bandos are both exactly the same stats. So if you were to die at Nex, you would always have Protect item on, pretty much, and Protect one item and your full Barrows set if you would use it. That would be a very, very cheap way of doing it in comparison to Torva. However, if you can afford Torva, the difference it makes is actually very notable. Because I've done quite a few kills in Bandos, which has the same stats as Barrows. As soon as I switched to full Torva, the difference was a lot easier. I started ending kills with still half of my pack yak left in with Rocktails. Same goes for Torva Plate Body. Substitute that for any Barrows or Bandos plate body. Same with Torva Plate Legs. Glavian Boots, I take them for the ranged, the magic defense. Since how I do it, how I pretty much sort of set out or to take the least amount of damage, is I, on most phases, use Protect Melee. However, on the Shadow phase I use Protect Range, but I'll get into the phases later. However, you want to max out as much magic defense as possible. It's correct that in the last phase she kind of just focuses whoever she wants, and in our teams we haven't really noticed, if you all stack on the same point, we haven't really noticed anyone take substantially more damage. Everyone just takes quite a lot of damage, so yeah. And so you want to just max out your magic defense. Ignore the fact that your magic defense will be a hell of a lot higher than anyone else's there, because your job is to get them to the last phase, and everyone else's job is to quite simply kill her before she kills you in the last phase. And the item which I conveniently missed out, the Arcane Spirit Shield, this is essential, absolutely essential. The reason for that is, well, if you don't have it, your time for tanking might still be possible if you wear full Ganodermic and just everything. However, it'll be so much harder, because I believe that the effect is you take 70% less damage with, and you take a little less prayer. For the record, if you have the Penance Aura, you will still gain prayer if you get hit with magic when you're wearing an arcane shield. I tried soloing and I used my Penance Aura, and I didn't need to use any kind of super restores whatsoever, which was pretty good. So if it's your first time tanking there and you're using an arcane, I'd definitely advise the Penance Aura, because if you go on no prayer at Nex, you'll be praying melee, and you'll be using the arcane for the magic damage reduction, and also obviously all of your magic defense. And so if you do run out of prayer, you will take 50% more melee damage and 70% more magic damage. So it's essential that you always have at least one prayer point at all times. Otherwise, the damage increase is just mental. So yeah, that's my gear. It's actually a lot more straightforward than I made it out. My inventory is overload. You don't need an overload. However, I wouldn't really advise taking extremes, because on the first phase she has a move, Nex has a move where you lose stats. However, you can take extremes and use them after the first phase, I believe. So yeah, overload isn't required though, in at least how we do it. I think only one other person in our full group has no overloads. Yeah, anti-poison, she poisons you. It doesn't do that much damage anymore. Unless she keeps poisoning you, it's probably best just to take another rocktail, but for the sake of doing things properly, anti-poison is always a good idea. Lots of rocktails. Hooray for rocktails. One Sara Flask for if you're ever in a very dire situation. You can use a Sara Flask and a rocktail at pretty much the same time, just for extra health boost. Super Restore Flask. I like to take these even though I don't need to because I have an overload. However, if the reason why I take them is just so when my stats get lowered from Nex in the first phase, I can, well, they'll always be at full. Obviously a teleport out, in case things just go wrong and you're obviously not going to get the kill. And I also take a maul for the blood phase, where I help out as much as I can with damage, because damage in the blood phase it's very important that you have a certain amount of, that your team has very high damage. Especially since this guide is designed for low levels, you will need a maul. If not, you can use a God Sword, I'd imagine, because they're actually pretty similar stats. There's only about 100 damage difference. However, the tank on the blood phase does need to help out. If the tank is only just getting through without dying, probably best if you don't and you just let other people do the damage. However, yeah, it's just, you need to weigh out the pros and the cons, because when you unequip your arcane spirit shield in the blood phase, you will take a lot more damage. You'll take about 70% more magic damage, which hurts like hell unless you have a huge amount of food which you're just willing to waste, or unless, like our group, or unless like our team, you can get Nex, you can push her through that phase really quickly. In a few of the other kills, we have actually been able to get her through the blood phase before she actually does a second siphon. If you don't know the tactics, I'll get into that later, but pretty much that is just a very, very quick just phase, because she switches phases when she reaches 40% health, and so if you just put on as much damage as you can, then that phase will last a lot shorter and your tank will take a lot less damage. I think that's it for the tank. I'll very quickly go through other setups and what our other team members have. Okay, this is Damon's / the melee major, melee ranger even. This is his setup in his inventory. Things do vary very slightly. He uses Goliath gloves, whereas he also uses dragon boots, so I've got Colour and Romancer's gloves and Steadfast, but it's the same kind of setup. So he's got a maul. This is because Nex prays range and melee, and so whenever Nex is praying range, he'll melee, vice versa, pretty straightforward. He also has extreme defense, extreme ranging, and extreme magic. He spends most of his time doing range, ideally, because range damage output does seem to be a bit higher. Also, his job in the blood phase is to kill the blood reavers, and he also kills the minions, all of with range, so that's why no melee pots. He will use the defense potions once at the start of the kill, and once after the smoke phase ends, and that's just to pretty much refresh his boost on them, because otherwise the smoke phase will have diminished the potions, and they'll be, he'll probably be at negative stats, which he'll just boost up with a restore. Obviously anti-poison, just because poison. Super restore flasks. He has less super restore flasks than I do. However, I'd imagine that he'd only get through 2 or 3, and the reason for that is at the end of each kill I use about 4, and that's because I've got a my spirit shield, which reduces prayer depending on how much magic damage I take. Obviously the rest rocktails, and in his war tortoise rocktails, I personally use a yak with 30 rocktails in it. House tallies if it goes bad, and now his gear. He wears obviously royal bolts with the royal crossbow. Tazar or Tazoktar cape from the fight kiln, since he uses melee. That could be switched for an Ava's accumulator though. Whichever is your preference. If you're using more than one attack style, always Fury. I know that Amulet of Ranging gives 0.1 higher crit for ranged, however it doesn't give any prayer bonus, any melee or magic crit. Royal Crossbow, that's fairly essential. It absolutely melts through the minions so fast. Mage is very, very ineffective against the minions. It'll take a long time for you to kill any of Nex's minions with Mage. The same with Blood Reavers. They're not as resistant to magic, but they're still fairly resistant, and incredibly weak to ranged. So Royal Crossbow is the same tier as Zarite Bow. It's about 4-ish, 5-ish mil. So why you'd ever get a Zarite Bow, I have no idea. Yeah, Royal Crossbow is an amazing, very probably borderline overpowered crossbow, especially for how easy it is to get. Colin Romance's gloves, just because they're very good gloves, although he'll be using Goliath gloves. Ring of Wealth. The reason why I don't take Ring of Wealth on the tank is because I will never get the kill. I contribute to about 2% of Nex's health. Yeah, I get amazed whenever I hit over 1k, whereas anyone who is actually doing damage will hit over 1k pretty much every time they hit. Royal Bolts, obvious reasons, Royal Crossbow. Full Ganodermic, that is because all of Nex's damage is, all of the damage which you'll be taking from Nex is sort of miscellaneous magic damage, apart from Blood Reavers, and in the Shadow phase, where everyone will need to pray range, because her range damage is actually quite high. I won't bother getting into the tactics yet, but yes, and Steadfast Boots, just generally fairly strong boots. Yeah, fairly straightforward. Magic resist, just, yeah. Okay, and this is the one of our mages setup, slightly changed, but yeah, regardless, this is the kind of thing that you want to be going for. I'll quickly go over what our other mage wears after this, but I won't have a clip of it. Vecna Skull, and he will use that after the first phase so that his stats don't get drained needlessly. Obviously that gives not only extra magic damage because he's using magic is its primary attack style. It also gives magic defense, which is lovely. A crystal bow just to help Damon with the minions. He doesn't help with the blood velds though, but that's just to quickly kill the minions. Teleport rune, or house teleports, like always. Dust runes, and that is because you can use Earth Surge. All of the Surge spells do the same damage. However, you can use Earth Surge with just Dust runes, and currently they're very cheap. However, I imagine in a few months they'll have evened out with all of the other runes at about 200 GP each. Yep, Super Restore Flasks, obviously. Obvious reasons, and Rocktails. Super Restore Flasks everybody takes, unless you have an overload, in which case you can take Prayer. But personally I just prefer Super Restore Flasks. And okay, so the gear is Ganodermic. I'll open this. Ganodermic. Firstly, a skill cape. That's because the skill capes actually give nice armor and a fairly good all-around crit bonus. And also +2 prayer if they're trimmed, I think. If they're not trimmed, then no. He uses the magic cape, however I don't have one in my bank, so just for displaying purposes I've got my Slayer cape. Amulet of Fury because he uses more than one attack style. Chaotic Staff, I think he actually uses a Master Wand and a Ward of Subjugation or something along those lines, but just generally a mage weapon will do fine. Or no, he uses a Staff of Light, and in the last phase he switches to a Master Wand and a Shield, so he can use defensive abilities. Colin Romancer's Gloves, fairly self-explanatory. Ring of Wealth because he might get the kill. The only reason why we do use Ring of Wealth is because all of our kills are done not on loot share. So I think that our drop chance is 1 in 16 with Ring of Wealth. However, if you use loot share, then you don't get the Ring of Wealth bonus, and as a result, you have a much smaller chance of getting a rare drop that you want. Full Ganodermic again. Rage Fires. I know that Simon, our other mage, he uses Robes of Subjugation instead of Ganodermic. That is just to make things easier, pretty much. No other reason for it. It just makes things quite a bit easier. Just because I think they have a higher life point bonus, and Subjugation. I swear that all of the attacking stats aren't showing when you change armor. They only show it negatively. For example, if you're using magic and you put on bandos, it'll go down. But if you're using magic and you put on mage robes, they don't go down. So you could wear dragon hide whilst maging and still have the same bonus, apparently. Personally, I think it's a bug which isn't yet fixed, but that's just that's not relevant. So yeah, I think that I've gone through everybody's gear. Simon, our other mage, have said wears Subjugation instead. He also wears a magic cape. Because Simon only uses magic and sticks on the bot at all times, he wears an Arcane Stream necklace, which is very, very good. It gives 4.9% crit, so another 0.7, which in the grand scheme of things is actually quite a bit. It's very nice. I know that Simon uses a Chaotic Staff, so yeah, it's just general mage stuff, which is relatively high level. Yeah, so I think we've gone through everything. If you've never been to Nex before, then you will need a frozen key, which you get from killing all of the different monsters, from Bandos, Armadale, Zamorak and Saradomin, in their enclosures. So you'll need to go to the Saradomin encampment to get the Saradomin part of the key. Yeah, that's about it, I think. You need Ancient Ceremonial if you don't want to get the kill count, which is very highly advised. You can buy it off the GE, nothing special about it, it's not untradeable, you don't get it any strange way. So yeah, and then when you're in there, well, before you go into Nex's chamber, there is a small banking room where you will get all of this inventory set up depending on what role you want to play. So yeah, I think it's time to actually commentate over the kill now. Okay, so this is the kill. I'm recording a sound file. There's a bit of sounds on. Okay, I've muted that. So I'm recording a sound file whilst actually watching the raw file, and then I'm just going to link them up in video editing software. Yeah, so okay, we've jumped in. You just quickly put on Protect Mage because you're running away from Nex at a range. Yeah, she uses magic when you're at ranged because she can't melee you. She doesn't really do too much range damage from what I gather, apart from on the second phase. But as the phases go, I'll discuss them. So in this phase, pretty much you just want to spread out a bit because Nex will cast a move on you. I'll explain why I just moved a second again. So Nex casts a move on you where you will cough, and all the people nearby you, as you just saw as a pretty perfect example, will also cough. When you cough, your stats get lowered. That's why you need the super restores. So yeah, that's one of the moves. She also does a dash through the move. However, by tanking her where we're tanking her, you can quite happily ignore that. She also drags you in like she just did then, however she didn't actually move me. That also stuns you. You can use freedom to get out of it, which I didn't realise until after making this video. So the minion just spawned. I continued tanking her away from all of the away from my teammates, so my teammates could quite happily kill her. And now it's the second phase, because when you kill the minion, the phase changes. So when you stand under Nex in this phase, you take very heavy damage quite consistently. I've foolishly not put on Protect Range, despite everyone else in my team doing so. As you can see, one of our mages isn't even on cursors. That kind of shows how much stats you need for this. The reason why everyone keeps moving around is every few seconds Nex will yell "Fear the Shadow," and a black circle will spawn under you. You need to move away from these. They can do from about 1.5k if you're lucky to about 5.5k damage. That's if you're very unlucky. So pretty much in this phase, protect range, keep moving around, and just steadily kill her. There's no real rush. There isn't any massive damage output unless you stay still. So the second minion spawned, and now I'm continuing tanking her here constantly. The reason why is the whole dark room thing, and the black shadows under the that spawn under you are done on a proximity around Nex. So the minion that was just killed was in the northeast part of the room, which is very far away. So that's why I continue tanking Nex while standing there. So we've killed that minion, everyone's come back, it's now the blood phase. I've switched to my maul because I need to for very high damage. As you can see, I'm taking a lot more damage. Damon is also ranging, and he's killing the blood velds very fast. The reason why I chose this video is because I'll actually have enough time to explain everything that's happening before this phase ends. Okay, so next spawns 2 blood reavers. You need to at least do some damage to them, because all of the blood, when she siphons, the blood reavers that are currently up, she kills and takes their health. And it's a lot easier to take health off blood reavers than it is off Nex, because Nex has a lot higher defense. When she says, "I demand a blood sacrifice," if you are already at range, you have to run away, because she'll then do a blood barrage on everyone in the room, or that's just nearby, and yeah, and then that'll heal her up even more. When she's siphoning, you also can't hit her whatsoever. because that further heals her. So that's just a huge healing phase for her. So we got through that phase quite quickly. The minion spawned, the minion's about to die. I'm tanking her around here to make the Zaros phase, the last phase, a bit easier for us to get into position for. So we've killed the minion, we've done with the blood phase, now it's the ice phase. She is protecting range, so Damon isn't able to use his crossbow, because the deflects deflect a lot of damage, and by that I mean potentially up to 2.5k damage per hit. So she used a move on me where she imprisons me in ice. If there are people nearby you, then firstly I should say that she seems to use that move a lot more on the person she is actually focusing on killing. Yeah, she just used another move called Contain This. That's, you simply just run away from it. That's all you do for that. So for the Prison of Ice, it can do potentially 6.8k damage. I've seen the highest it hit, and then Nex straight away after that hit me for another 1.2k damage. So that's 8k damage straight away from nothing. So you ideally need to be on at least 9.5k health if you want to realistically eat out of it. Okay, so she's just used a bit of she's just used Contain This again. I'm just steadily eating up. We've got her to the percentage where the minion is now attackable, and she's used the Prison of Ice on a mage. That's okay, providing the mage isn't on very low health, which he has no reason to be. I tried to break him out, but it didn't work. Also, something else which is good to add, or very useful to add, is for breaking people out of the prison, you click on this stalagmite, and you need, or if you have a melee weapon that has a lot of high melee damage, it seems to break people out a lot easier. However, with when you use a staff, it seems to have a very high fail rate. Okay, so we killed the minion, now we're doing the Zaros phase. She will pretty much, you need to stack on top of everyone and just out-tank her damage. If she is using a deflect of an attack style that you're using, she will take 0% damage and reflect back 100% onto you. So we've had it a few times, which is quite funny, where I'm using my maul, which I don't particularly like using on this phase unless I have a lot of spare food. So I use my maul and I use assault, the split second she puts on deflect melee, and I die just straight out because of the damage that she's doing, along with about reflecting or deflecting 5k damage back at me. There's not too much you can do. So on this phase you just need to stack up on each other, otherwise she does a very high damage magic move on everyone, and you just slowly kill her. Well, ideally you kill her quite quickly. I'm using Protect Melee. I don't know why. I should be using Protect Mage, although it feels like it doesn't actually have much effect on this phase. She'll cycle through 3 different prayers, well, 2 different prayers and a phase where she isn't praying. She will do not praying, she'll pray nothing, then she will pray Soul Split, where all of her damage is heals her slightly, and then she will do a phase where she is protecting either range or melee, and it seems to be if she takes more melee damage, she will protect melee, and if she takes more range damage, she will protect range. That's the Zaros phase. You just stack on each other, and yeah. And when she dies, she does Wrath, which you just saw, which yeah, you just run away from it. It doesn't do too much damage, but it's something that you just don't particularly want to get hit by. The reason why I didn't see any loot share, obviously, is because we aren't using loot share. We all know each other in real life, so we can trust each other if we get a drop. And that's Nex with a tank. Yeah. The main reason why it works is because you have a is because you just use provoke whenever you can, and you just rotate through all of your abilities that make you take less damage. Debilitate is a very good ability for that. It's a threshold ability. You should also always be using Anticipate, as well as Resonance, I think it's pronounced, and Preparation, which helps lower the cooldown of Resonance. Also, I had Slice, which I would use Slice and then another ability to help me get my adrenaline up as quickly as possible. That's about it, I think. Obviously, for ultimate abilities, you just want to be using Rejuvenate unless you're on the ice phase, in which case perhaps Barricade, if you think that you're going to take another ice prison, which will otherwise kill you, because Barricade blocks damage from ice prison. It blocks damage from everything. I think that's about it. If anyone has any questions, please do ask me anything. Any questions about gear, any questions about different tactics, will different setup of people work. And thank you very much for watching the video. Any input, any comments will be greatly appreciated. And thank you, goodbye.